and welcome to the final session of the Progressive Power Summit. Put in the chat what some of your favorite moments have been from this Progressive Power Summit put on by MoveOn. You're in the final session. Biden won. Now what? That is a question asked pretty much everywhere. And so the folks in this session are here to answer that. It's going to be really, really exciting. I see Maha Sandstorm says, thanks for joining us, Destiny Carr. Sandra Clark is a volunteer who reminds us that these recordings are going to be available via Facebook and elsewhere. And be sure to check out our photo booth. There's a lot of exciting things that are going on with the Progressive Power Summit. Before we get to the meat of this session, we have a special video from someone who you all know and hold dear, Reverend Barber.
I'm Reverend Dr. William J. Barber, President and Senior Lecturer of Repairers of the Breach and the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, along with my dear friend, the Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris. And to the MoveOn family and all of you who are listening in. You know, it's a sad thing in America that we have people in Congress now arguing over, are we going to pay the $100 million here or $1 trillion here, rather than dealing with the real moral issue. What is the cost of not at least taking a step towards ending poverty and low wealth and low wages and trying to build back better by building from the bottom up? We know this plan doesn't do everything, but we certainly can't go backwards. This plan that the president has laid out and that many progressives are fighting for is the kind of policy shift that is so important in this moment so that we can continue to make the shifts. Because poverty and low wealth and low wages is a result of policy choices and not personal morality. Here we're talking about over $3 trillion, 300-something billion dollars a year to create climate-conscious jobs and expand caring in the economy and to put more money in education and create a pathway to citizenship. It's what we're trying to do here, and to invest in communities that have not had real investment. We've seen the corporations get their trillions. 84% of all the COVID relief money went to corporations, not to the essential workers, not to poor and low wealth people who are the first to get sick, the first to go to work, the first to get sick, the first to get hospitalized, the first to die, the first to have back rent and couldn't pay their mortgages, the first to run out of whatever savings they had. And this COVID exposed the problem. And yes, we need COVID relief, but we need economic investment, long term. The truth is, Economic Policy Institute talks about how we need $10 trillion. But be that as it may, we need to start right here. We need to start now and keep pressing. And we can't let a non-constitutional filibuster get in the way. You know, the word filibuster actually means pirate. To be a pirate, it means a form of piracy. In Latin America, the filibusters were those who destabilized poor communities and Latin communities so they could take over those communities. And this filibuster is being used again to take over our democracy. It's wrong. And in this moment, we have to have the courage to stand up. We have to say to those politicians, you're having the wrong conversation. It's not about just the dollars. It's about who will be hurt if we don't do this. What will be the long-term cost if we don't do this? It's about understanding that the reason we have to do it is because we haven't done it before and invested properly. We put $21 trillion into war since 9/11. And now some want to block a compromise plan of just over $3 trillion over 10 years. No, the cost is too high. We lose $1 trillion a year because we don't address child poverty. We lose trillions of dollars a year because we don't address living wages. We have a housing crisis. We have a healthcare crisis. We have a climate crisis. And as James Baldwin said, if we made this mess, we can clean it up. And so this plan is a step, it's a beginning, it's a right thing. And we need to unite. And we need to put a face on this. We've said even to the president, meet with poor and low wealth people. Put a face on this. Let them talk to America. Let them come out and say what their lives will be like if this doesn't go through and what their lives are already like. And then go to the well of the Congress and declare that if we're going to be America, we've got to protect 3 infrastructures: the infrastructure of our democracy, voting rights, the infrastructure of our daily lives, which is dealing with climate change, dealing with low wages, dealing with health care, dealing with housing, dealing with building communities from the bottom up, and then the infrastructure of our roads, our bridges, and our technology. We can't do a little piece here and a little piece there. We need to do it all, and this is an important step. Join the fight. Forward together, not one step back.
It is always powerful to hear from the Reverend Dr. William Barber. Noam Shander says it's our job to make sure members of Congress get this simple truth. Abby Lane says that so glad that all America now gets to experience the power of Reverend Barber that we've seen in North Carolina for so long. Lisa Leslie says it all stems from the same systemic issue. Rachel Singh says, preach Reverend Barber. And to that, we now tee up the entree of this session of the summit, and I will introduce our moderator for a fireside chat, Ashley Allison, who's going to be joined by the president of SEIU's International, Mary Kay Henry, and our executive director, Rahna Epting. Ashley?
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here with 2 phenomenal leaders, people, visionaries. We have heard from Reverend Barber. We are going to hear from Mary Kay Henry and Rahna Epting about the moment that we are in, and the moment really that you all enabled us to be in. You all organized for 4 years under a Trump presidency. You all stood in the gap when people were questioning whether it was possible to beat someone like him. And we won. We showed up, we showed out, and we delivered victory for the people and for this country. And so it is so critical right now to continue the conversation and continue to deliver for the people. So I wanna start off the conversation and really just get into it. We see on the news, if you're watching any news, you hear this phrase, build back better. It was a campaign promise that Joe Biden offered to the voters that he would deliver. And now we're trying to get this Build Back Better plan passed. So Mary Kay, I want to go to you first and ask you just why is the full Build Back Better package so critical in this moment right now?
Thanks, Ashley, and thanks to all the MoveOn activists on this. We can't move this forward unless we're all putting pressure on the people trying to get to decisions in DC. So I'm proud to stand with you. I think what we have to understand about Build Back Better is it's got a jobs investment in it for women of color who do home care work and childcare work. And what's better this time around is that they'll be included in jobs investments when they were excluded from the New Deal in the 30s. So that's one key way that it's better. Women of color who do care work in this country, 67% Black, brown, immigrant, indigenous women are going to get invested in and finally be able to do living wage, valuable work for seniors and people with disabilities and children. The other thing that's better about Build Back is climate resilience. There are standards for a clean energy economy, both in creating good jobs that people also will have living wages on, but also in setting standards that allow us to reach the carbon emission goals that have been set by the Biden administration. And then the other thing that's really better about this way of building back is that for the first time in the history of the country, parents are going to be able to afford childcare. And so I think of this build back as investing in good living wage jobs and in all the things that working families need, in being able to go to work with peace of mind, paid family leave, childcare, being able to get community college so that you can get access to classes that you've dreamed of doing but have never been able to afford. There's so many things that I love that we're discussing this afternoon, so we can take the slogan and really understand this is worth fighting for.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to dig into a little bit more what's in the bill, but Rahna, I want to ask you the same question. You know, you're leading this powerful and important organization, MoveOn, in this moment. And why do you think it's so critical to pass Build Back Better, the full package?
Thank you, Ashley. And thank you, Mary Kay, for joining the MoveOn community today. Both of you, I'm so honored to have you. Yes, for the very reasons Mary Kay spoke to, I think she listed out some very tangible examples of why it's so important to get this full package passed. And I'll say, to put a summary on it, because it will fundamentally change lives for people all across this country to make it better, to make it easier to move through, to make it more possible for us to thrive. And it is a substantial step forward on many respects, from investing in the care economy to making a substantial commitment, a down payment to tackling climate change, and to creating a pathway to citizenship for so many people in this country and more. So passing the full package, if we're successful, we are able to get all of this through Congress, which is ultimately a compromising institution. So we are doing our best all throughout this beautiful community to push to make sure as much of these beautiful things actually end up in this bill and get passed. The other reason it's important, y'all, because this is what 81 million people showed up at the polls and that they voted for back in November. Democrats have an urgent need to deliver. So on the policy alone, it will change people's lives, but politically, we worked our hearts out in the last election cycle. And I don't say that lightly. So many of us that are joined here today went through a lot over the last year to make sure that we were able to kick Donald Trump out of the White House and elect Democrats. And this is their chance to show the people of this country that life under Democratic governance is fundamentally better. And it's so critical not just to keep Democrats in office, but it's so critical because our alternative is a growing fascist, pro-authoritarianism opponent. And that is a real threat. And so what we need now is to show that when people turn out and they vote, that the mandate they vote on is actually comes to fruition. And so it doesn't, it's going to take all of us to make that happen. Ultimately, this is a democracy. And that means when we elect people, we need to also push them to pass the policies that we elected them on.
Wow, what if government worked like that? We elected folks and then they did stuff for us. Wow, what a novel idea. Okay, so Rahna, you kind of hit on this, but I want to dig in a little bit deeper. If you're following this fight, and I'm going to presume you are because you're on this community conversation, progressives have been really holding the line for people and for a comprehensive package and not leaving one community out and negotiating against another, really have been bringing the whole coalition together in the Democratic Party. And because of that, I think hopefully we can deliver the substantive packages both you, Mary Kay, and Rahna, you talked on. But what do you think if progressives are actually able to deliver for the progressive movement? What do you think that means for the fight going forward? And Rahna, I'll start with you because you kind of started, and then Mary Kay, I'd love to come to you on this point.
Ooh, it's the potential is absolutely beautiful. And I'll just say, I think we can all agree that progressive power is in a fundamentally different and more powerful place in this moment than we were 10 years ago. We are a bigger movement. So there are more organizations, there are more activists, there are more regular folks that became politicized, that recognized that participatory democracy is the way forward. So we are bigger, there are more of us. And in fact, the majority of the public agrees with progressive values and policies more and more. In addition, we have the significant progressive voting bloc that we have all worked so hard to elect in the US House of Representatives. And because of the leadership of Representative Jayapal, who sits at the head of that, they have serious negotiating power. And that is the reason in the last 48 hours, progressives were able to hold the line and ensure that the Democrats didn't just pass the bipartisan bill, which is good, but it's necessary but insufficient on its own. And they said, no, we want to pass the whole thing. So that, I think if you told me 10 years ago that progressives would have enough power in the House in order to ensure the full package is what Democrats are going for, and they're not going for crumbs, I'm not sure I would have believed it. But we're in a fundamentally different place right now. And it didn't just happen by chance. The organizing, the mobilizing, the advocacy and campaigning work of MoveOn members, SEIU members, of so many folks all throughout this country. We helped elect these folks into office. We help be the wind at their backs. We bolster them when they're making hard decisions. That's the work we all did. So we got us to this point. And so what it means for where we move forward, if we're able to pass the Build Back Better agenda, that is wind at our backs. That is momentum. And I think next we got to pass structural democracy reform with the Freedom to Vote Act, and sky's the limit moving forward. But we have to enter into 2022 with something to show the voters that, look, we elected y'all, they delivered, and now we got to keep these folks in office and, in fact, expand our margins.
Yes, organizing. It works. Power to the people. Mary Kay, what do you think it means if we are able to, after progressives have done such a great job, and shout out to Congresswoman Jayapal for her leadership. It is so wonderful to see a woman of color at the helm of the progressive movement, leading and fighting for the people. What do you think it means for the path forward and where we can go as a progressive movement if we deliver Build Back Better?
I think the sky's the limit. And Rahna just laid out how when we make Build Back Better and the Infrastructure and Jobs Act pass, we go on to voting rights, we get the path to citizenship, we move back to police reform. There's so much that those 88 million people showed up for. And then I would just add to Rahna's imagination that I think it's going to be really important for us to tell the story to the people that showed up in 20 about how this happened and why electing Congress people that are often a challenger to the status quo, or maybe you're not so familiar with, is really worth backing. Because the people that are willing to take risks and stick their necks out and get elected to Congress then become this progressive bloc in DC, and we have to back it. And I know for SEIU's 2 million members and the 6 million people that we door knocked last year, we're going to need to be able to tell the story that this didn't just happen by chance. This happened because of an act of power in Congress about the overwhelming majority of American people and what they need, and challenged the Chamber of Commerce, the private equity lobby, the fossil fuel lobby, the pharmaceutical industry. There are major forces circling the House and the Senate to insist that this doesn't get done. And so our power in Congress is being felt, and we now need to just get it across the finish line. But we're going to have to go talk to the people that are working 2 and 3 jobs that we're going to need to have show up and vote and make the case for there's going to be a material change in our lives, and we have to keep moving in the direction until we uproot systemic racism. We have a truly multiracial democracy where everybody can freely and safely vote. And these 2 pieces of legislation and the others that Rahna mentioned are really important steps. But we have to expand the power of the people that are participating in order to win our full vision of a just and equitable society.
We're gonna I have one more question, then I'm gonna go to Darrell to get a question from the audience. So if you want to drop that in the chat, go ahead and do that. But it feels sometimes overwhelming. Like the last 48 hours is like whiplash on Capitol Hill. What's happening? Where's the football? Where's the bat? Like it's even for someone like me who follows it, it's hard to keep up. So how do we get this passed? We have to get Build Back Better done. We have to do democracy forum and police reform and all the things that Rahna laid out. But Rahna, what's next in the fight? Like, how are we going to actually get this done for the people?
Yeah. So first I'll say I wholeheartedly stand behind everything me and Mary Kay said about what is possible. And it's not going to be easy. Leadership right now is negotiating with moderates and progressives and trying to reach a deal on the framework for the Build Back Better agenda. And that does its best not to leave anyone behind in it. But I'm not going to lie to you. There are powerful forces lining up against this bill. Washington special interests, corporate special interests, and even some conservative Democrats who want to water it down, who want to cut out key provisions that are really going to invest in people over profits. The power that we've built on the progressive side of the aisle is incredible. And yet we still have like a ways to go. We need to do several things as they continue to hash out this legislation. We have to continue to echo the demand far and wide through calls, meetings with your members of Congress, ads, actions, and more. We have to continue to advocate for the full package. And we need to talk about why it matters. It has to actually touch the hearts and minds of people, make it tangible. A lot of the talk in DC is about, is it 3.5 trillion? Is it 10 trillion? Is it 2 trillion? Regular people, normal people, I don't know about you. I don't care about the number. I care about the outcome and how it actually impacts people's lives. So when they're talking about the number, they're really talking about what gets cut, who gets cut out of this package. And so we have to be really, until this is done, our job is not done. So the advocacy work, the mobilizing, the organizing, the calls, you all have been totally on top of things. We're going to continue to need you throughout this. But I also want to speak to a little bit of what Reverend Barber said before we have started our discussion, is that there is this arcane Senate rule called the filibuster that will continue to be on our way. And right now we're talking about the Build Back Better agenda because we're using a special process called reconciliation, which isn't available for all the bills and all the legislation we want to pass. So our work after the Build Back Better agenda to continue to push for democracy reform and all these other things that we voted for Democrats to deliver on, the filibuster stands in the way. Massive, mounting, consistent, persistent pressure on our elected officials to do away with status quo, normal, norms so that they can deliver is what's necessary. And as long as they stay committed to these old rules, which really don't function for people, that will continue to get in our way. So we're going to need y'all throughout, and we're going to need y'all in the 2022 election. And I just say, let's do this work together with joy. We're very lucky to live in a country where all of this is possible, and we have such incredible potential in this moment.
Wow. Mary Kay, do you have any other thing you want to add before we go to the audience for a question?
Amen, amen.
I know, right?
That's what I want to say. Yeah.
Okay, Darrell, I'm going to go to you, and maybe you can grab a question from the audience.
Absolutely. So Ann Wingert asks, should we also try to take control of local legislatures as a way to change the lives of Americans? And I'll pose this to our executive director, Rahna, first.
Am I on? Yes. We have to vie for power everywhere. And I know, for everyone who volunteers with MoveOn, we focus a lot on national politics, on, U.S. House and U.S. senators, because that's how we do this work at scale. But we also do a lot of work together to endorse and support and campaign for state and local officials. And we've done that throughout the years. We'll do that again this election cycle. But we need to be vying for power everywhere. And as long as Republicans control state legislatures, they can pass these very dangerous voter suppression bills. They can do a lot of harm to our communities. So volunteering in state races, volunteering in local races, being a precinct captain, getting involved in your Democratic Party, all of this stuff is super, super important. Being the infrastructure to the progressive left is what we need everyone to do. And whether that's through MoveOn or that's at the local level, you can do both. I'd ask Mary Kay if she has any thoughts on that question too.
Well, that MoveOn members ought to consider putting their hands up and running for office as well. School boards, water district, city council, state ledge, and the most formidable members of Congress just cut their teeth in city council fights or state legislative fights. I just heard Ayanna Pressley from Massachusetts, the congresswoman there, speak about her time on the Boston City Council as getting her ready for this moment that we're in. So we've got to change the rules at every level of government, and the forces that want to maintain the status quo and push us back and hold white supremacy in place are working at every level of government, and so should we.
Yes, it's at every level. We have to be engaged and push folks to be engaged. So both of you talked a little bit about this in regards to the other forces that are trying to block this bill, special interest groups, big corporations who don't want, to make sure people get access to the things they deserve and they voted for. So what do you think MoveOn members can actually do to counter the influence of the big lobbying efforts that are running on ads and by corporations that don't want to pay their fair share? I'll start with you, Rahna, since MoveOn members are your people, and then Mary Kay, I'd love to hear how you're thinking about this from a labor perspective for sure.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot y'all have been doing so far. We've been pooling together groups of MoveOn members to bird dog Republican senators or conservative House members. Bird dogging is a term for going up to them and saying, hey, are you going to support the full Build Back Better Act, or who are you going to leave out of this package? Folks have been mobilizing actions in state to show support for the full package and talk about why it's important. MoveOn members are funding, $1 million ad campaigns for us to take corporate Democrats to task in their districts and hold Senate Republicans accountable for being in the pockets of the ultra wealthy. So making calls. I mean, we've had our cohorts of MoveOn members all throughout this year. There have been dozens and dozens and dozens of folks in different House districts and Senate and holding lobby meetings with their members of Congress and with their U.S. senators to talk about what's important and why they need their elected officials to support the full package. So y'all have been doing incredible work. Keep doing it. And I would also say get involved with the local organization as well. We are so proud of folks being part of the MoveOn community, but we also encourage folks to be part of the broader community at the local, state, and national level.
Thanks. Mary Kay, how do we counter these corporate folks who don't want the people to get what they deserve and don't want to pay their fair share?
Right now, we have to outnumber them. And so every MoveOn member who thinks you're maxed out and have done every email, text, phone call, donation, you need to get 3 or 5 more people in the next 24 to 48 hours to do the exact same thing you are. because there is a huge way in which Rahna and I hear daily from Congress people, oh, the number of calls on this is going way up, or it matters. So that's the thing right here, right now. We have to turn up the heat, and they have to understand what the president is saying. These are the most popular investments in our generation, and we have to fight like hell to make sure Congress invests in changing climate and creating clean energy jobs, invests in home care and child care work, and expands the ability of working parents to be able to go to work with peace of mind, for God's sake. Invests in a pathway to citizenship for people that have worked us through the pandemic. There are so many good investments. And that's the other thing MoveOn members have to do. You got to break it down for people and help them understand the urgency of all of us being all in throughout the month of October, so that we contest for this power through our numbers. And then totally support everything Rahna said. We've asked SEIU members to invest more, to volunteer more. We're going to start knocking doors for 22 in the middle of October. We have to send a message to the current Congress that they are going to be held accountable if they don't do the right thing in this Congress.
Okay, so we're coming up on the last question that's going to come from me, and then we're going to go to the community to hear from you. I'm going to switch up the last question because I think you all answered really what I wanted to ask about what is in the bill. But I want to say, like, if you could talk to someone right now who doesn't support the Build Back Better plan, how do you, Mary Kay, you're talking about like breaking it down for folks. Some people need to get it be broken down because they don't get how this will really help people and be transformative. What would you say to someone about Build Back Better as to why they should support it, particularly if they're not there right now? Rahna, you want to start? Or Mary Kay? Yeah, go ahead, Mary Kay, start. Yeah.
My experience with people that don't understand the debate in Congress, which I find, and I'm close to it, very hard to follow. And what I say is, tell me about the hardest thing you and your family have faced in the past year. Because whatever people have faced in the past year, these two pieces of legislation are trying to address. And so I would connect people's most urgent interests for themselves and their families to why we need government to act. Because we're up against 40 years of government being pounded on by the right wing in this country as not being the answer to our problems. And so the other thing we have to do in those conversations is understand that it's going to be building a relationship with the people that don't understand or are objecting and bringing them along with us. Because we are up against a polarized right wing attack on our vision and values that is using race to divide us. And I think we have to have our eyes wide open. And I, as a white woman, have to own the privilege that I've existed in and help interpret why I have an economic stake in the investments being for everybody and including everyone. Because if everyone isn't included, my economic well-being isn't going to be increased. And helping people connect those dots across race is a key way that we're going to be a formidable force that they can't turn back.
Wow. That's breaking it down. That's what we call there. Rahna, what would you tell someone?
I would say I'm just seeing a lot of confusion over the last 48 hours about, did progressives do the right thing? Who's tanking the Biden agenda? Is it corporate Democrats or progressives in Congress? And, I just think like being very clear, what progressives did over the last week was to say, no, we want to pass the whole thing. We don't want half measures. This is not a time for half measures. And that was brilliant because you know why? The full package is possible. They did not do a foolish thing. They did a brilliant thing because we've been passing half measures for decades. We actually have the potential in this moment through the reconciliation process to make a historic investment in a broad definition of infrastructure in this country that is long gone ignored and underinvested in. And so why would we settle for peanuts when we actually don't have to right now? And we have this amazing opportunity, and progressives open the window back up over the last 2 days, and they said, no, we're not closing it yet. We can get the whole thing through. And they forced the hand of the entire Democratic Congress to continue to try to do that. So I'm very proud of them. And I think there's some confusion around who the heroes are. Let's be clear. This is historic that we have enough power in Congress to say we're not going to leave people behind. And so that's one thing I would clarify.
Thank you. So I'm leaving the conversation right now. I want to thank Mary Kay and Rahna for being in dialogue, and I want to thank the MoveOn community for having me. But Darrell, I know you have some questions from the audience, so I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashley. Just a couple of comments before I ask that last question. Giselle Gutierrez says, this summit has given me the confidence, tools, and excitement to take on a seat for Texas, for U.S. representative for Texas' 4th congressional district. She's getting a lot of excitement in the chat. Carmen Branson says, I'm loving the energy here. I enjoyed talking with Cade in the storytelling booth. I'd like to see Cade get started on a local level. MoveOn, I can help you. We're with you, Cade. So that is awesome. And one last thing, if you want to get involved with MoveOn even further, there's an app for that. And it's the MoveOn Mobilizers app. I don't know if you can see it. Do a search on your phone for MoveOn Mobilizers, and that's what it looks like. So our last question comes from Anna, who asks, you've both had long storied careers in organizing. What moments can you look back to that give you optimism today? Moments that didn't look like they were going to pan out that ended up working out for someone who's not as optimistic about where we're headed.
Oh, so many. Mary Kay, do you want to share one first?
I'm happy to follow you.
I mean, so there's a lot, but I'll just use one recently because it was very impactful for me. I think for this country. I wasn't sure we were going to win the 2020 election. Mm-hmm. I thought it could go either way, that we would have another 4 years of Donald Trump in the presidency. And it was in real question whether our democracy could hold another 4 years. And I saw people organize and put their entire being into ensuring everyone they knew turned out to vote in the election. People overcame the threat of a pandemic. They risked their lives and their health to make sure that people showed up and they were able to vote. There was a lot of scary death threats out there for a lot of organizers on the ground that were trying to make sure their people could come out and vote. And they literally risked their lives for this election. And remember election night? We weren't sure who had won. Mm-hmm. There was no clear victor. The votes were still coming in and the votes were still being counted. And this beautiful community, not just here with us today, but all throughout the country, we stuck together. We held the faith. We mobilized to say every vote must be counted. Let's be patient. Let's make sure we're doing this intentionally. And that Saturday morning, I was at an event in downtown DC, and where we were saying, let's count all the votes. And right behind me, before I went up on stage, they announced President Biden has officially won the election, or Joe Biden officially won the election. He will be the next president. And I could not believe it because that was not guaranteed, y'all. And we made that happen. We made that happen. And so it is proof. And sometimes it feels like you're just doing a small thing, a drop in the bucket. This isn't going to make a difference. But when we all act together, it does. That's my story.
My first thought was African-American nursing home worker who had a union button on and was pulled into the administrator's office with two supervisors and the administrator, who spent 3 hours trying to get her to take the button off because it was 3 days before the union election, and they knew if she took the button off that the election wouldn't prevail because she was seen as the key leader. And then they threatened to change her schedule, which would totally upend the childcare sort of strategy she had put together for her family. And she walked out of that office kept the union button on. I talked to her later that night. She just wept. She went back in fearless and courageous the next day. And I have to say, for me, that's the source of hope. I've seen fearlessness and courage in the face of intense opposition in every year of my life for primarily women who have built SEIU all across the service and care sector. And I think that happened this past week in Congress, where progressives were pressured to shift and vote for the BIF, and they held. And I thought that was a great expression of the fearlessness and courage that I've come to know deep in my heart, and is what fuels my passion and incredible belief that as we build a stronger movement and link up organizations like SEIU and MoveOn, there's nothing we can't accomplish together.
That is amazing. I'm pretty sure y'all are just as excited as I am. I'm about to introduce one of the amazing MoveOn members, just like there are a lot of you out there right now watching the summit. Miss Evelyn Malone is a retired professional educator and a political activist. She was a public school teacher in her home state of Texas, which is also my home state, for 24 years. 2 consecutive years, Miss Evelyn was named Teacher of the Year for 2 separate schools in which she taught. Additionally, during the latter part of the 90s, she lived in northern Mexico for 2 years. She's been an active member of MoveOn since 2017, and she is a known presence in a lot of the things that we do. Without further ado, I introduce
Okay, can you guys hear me? Thank you so much for that introduction, Darrell. And I am just really, I'm just amazed at the information that was just shared, and I'm just motivated now, certainly, to move forward. I really appreciate this opportunity to share with you guys and hopefully give you some upbeat motivations to continue. And if you're just starting to really join us and become actively involved in the MoveOn community, I want to just start by saying that one of my favorite musicians, Duke Ellington, once said, life has 2 rules. Rule number 1 is never quit. And rule number 2 is remember rule number 1. Yeah, my profession, like Darrell said, I am a professional educator. And I want to share with you a story now about my involvement with MoveOn, because you might want to know, why do I stay? Why am I here? Well, in 2018, when children were being placed in cages like animals, my heart felt like it was just being ripped out of my chest. And one of the posters that I saw, and I actually have it now, it said, do all lives still matter? Asking for a kid in a cage. And that one just really impacted me. So that summer in June 2018, MoveOn provided the platform for us to really rally against the dehumanization of and atrocities at our southern border and the Families Belong Together initiative. And my initial thoughts were, what if those precious children were my students? And I knew that I could not just stand by and do nothing. I wanted to give them a hug, to wipe their tears away, to make sure they had enough food and clean clothes and that they could just go play. That was my mentality. So before the rally started, I knew that I had heard about children who were actually being placed in shelters. And I'm thinking, I wonder if there's a shelter nearby where I live in northeastern Illinois. So I got online and I Googled and I found a shelter and I called and shared my passion with them. I said, you know what? I'm an educator, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and I want to do something. What can I do? So we had that rally, but this is what I thought. There is no way that I want to have a 90-minute rally for kids who are separated from their families and go home and say, wow, that was awesome. That's not my mentality. And so when I found this phone number, we shared information through phone calls, emails, and in August 2018, we had established a partnership. And today I am very proud to say that partnership is alive and well. Last August 2020, I, along with other MoveOn members in my area, we delivered 99 backpacks filled with school supplies for children. And like I said, our partnership is alive. It is active. And I will just tag this on too. We rallied in a town close by where I live. And it's a town that's red, still red today. But 600 people showed up. 600 people. And I'm not bragging about that. I'm saying they showed up because we're talking about children. We're talking about families. And people resonate with lives. And we have to keep that momentum alive. And so why am I here? Why do I stay? I'm here because I care about our collective democracy. And I in every speech that I give, I have to give credit to my mother, because she would often tell us as kids, when you see something that needs to be done, do it. When you see someone who needs help, help them. So there is no way I could walk away from the children. And today I still can't walk away from the children. It's just embedded in me. It's who I am. I'm here today in this movement, in this part of history, because I am part of we, the people, that's stated in the preamble to the Constitution of the United States. I'm here. I'm part of that we. You know, according to Les Brown, he's one of my favorite motivational speakers. He says, life takes on meaning when you become motivated, set goals, and change them in an unstoppable way. Don't stop. Don't quit. Remember the rule. So my overriding reminder to all of us today is this, and you've heard it said by these ladies today, we are most powerful together. And that means all of us. So with that said, here's my call to action. We, us, we're part of that we, the people. This MoveOn community needs you in our Mobilize to Win community. Our leaders, as you very well know, just organized regional caucuses, and that's covering every state in the United States of America. We have caucuses. And as a mobilizer, you will have, you'll be able to join a nationwide community that's passionate. It's a grassroots effort. It's a grassroots group of organizers all around the country. And you can take action to be included in this progressive future that you've heard the ladies talk about. And here's what you can expect after joining the Mobilize to Win community. And I must say, I am happy to be there. There's so much going on. There's so much action, and people are connected. So that's the number one thing you will find there, connecting with people who are like-minded individuals just like you. And not just connecting, you're going to connect with people who want to make a difference in building a community where everyone, as MoveOn very clearly says, everyone can thrive. You're going to be able to exchange information. And let me tell you the importance of that. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. We don't know everything. But together we get tips here, inspiration there, and through organizing, those tough times of challenging organizing, and there will be some challenges, let's face it, but together, when we put our tips together and move forward, we are unstoppable. And then you're going to be invited to the best in-class movement trainings like this summit. Believe me, I've been there, I've gone, and it is absolutely incredible. But this is what's most powerful. Every single month, we will hear from MoveOn staff members on the latest campaign updates, analysis, and whatever else is most effective for us to continue moving forward as leaders. This is the space where you get to plant your seeds, nurture them, and watch them grow far and wide. That's going to happen in the caucuses. You will be part of this progressive movement, this progressive harvest. And I truly hope to see each of you in our Mobilize to Win community. Darrell just showed you the app. You can find it. There's been links posted in our chat boxes. And I want to encourage you, sign up, and let us know when you arrive. And I will conclude by saying this. It's a thought by W.E.B. Du Bois, one of the founders of the NAACP in 1909. He stated, now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not one more convenient season, not when you're comfortable or when everything is, I feel better. Now is the accepted time. It is today that our best work can be done, and not the future day or some future year. It's today. It is today that we fit ourselves together for the greater good, if we can organize today and come together today, we will be more useful for tomorrow. Today is the seed time. Now are the hours of work, and tomorrow comes the harvest. The build back better when we can win that. But we've got to work to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to make sure that passes. And after that, we can have playtime. This weekend, we've been presented with a lot of seeds. So here's my question. Where and how will you plant your seeds? In these caucuses, is it going to be a closed caucus, or are you going to spread it far and wide into your area of this nation? Will you remain and help nurture and watch the people that are new? There are a lot of new people on this call. Are you going to help nurture them and help them grow? Please join your regional caucuses, and please join the storytelling team, and let's keep these seeds growing. And will you remember life's rule, number 1 and number 2, don't quit. You can take a break. We need to take breaks. Take a pause, but don't quit. And I'm here to say that I stay because we must be about the business of restoring the integrity and the dignity of our democracy. Remember, this is our democracy. We are Americans. We are the people that's stated in the preamble to the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evelyn. That was powerful. So, like she said, join us. This has been an amazing weekend. We want to thank everyone that was a panelist, everyone that was a trainer, the Patriotic Millionaires, SEIU with Mary Kay Henry. We have WFP, Mo Mitchell, who was part of a panel, and everyone that was part of every session. Again, thank you. Don't forget to join Mobilize, and let this not be the last time that we all gather together. Thank you and good evening.